More executive actions. President Joe Biden remains busy in his second full day in office. We're at the White House. Considering the nominees, lawmakers are hearing more about the picks to fill the new administration's cabinet. Fight for the unborn. On the anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court case legalizing abortion across the country, we look at where the pro-life movement stands now. And reaching out, how the faithful in Rome are helping those who are less fortunate. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, January 22nd, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. On this day, declared National Sanctity of Human Life Day by former President Donald Trump, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris released a blistering statement in defense of Roe v. Wade. The new president is also not backing down from his stance against the Little Sisters of the Poor. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. The Biden administration just released a public letter promoting abortion. Now, it's a sharp turn from the pro-life Trump administration, and it comes on the 48th anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court ruling Roe v. Wade.
On their third day in office, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris released this joint statement. They say, in the past 4 years, reproductive health, including the right to choose, has been under relentless and extreme attack. We are deeply committed to making sure everyone has access to care, including reproductive health care, adding they are committed to codifying Roe v. Wade and appointing judges that respect foundational precedents like Roe.
Republicans believe that every child is a sacred gift of God.
This is in direct opposition to President Donald Trump, who added 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court and hundreds more to other federal courts. President Joe Biden has also said he will keep challenging the Little Sisters of the Poor in court over their fight against the Obama-era contraception mandate. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about the Little Sisters last night.
I haven't discussed that particular issue with him. I'm happy to circle back with you, but there's not a change in his position from what he said earlier this summer.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden signs off on 2 more executive orders focused on pandemic relief, calling for more money to feed the hungry, to protect unemployed workers who refuse to take a job that could jeopardize their health, and to seek to boost the minimum wage to $15 an hour for federal workers and contractors. White House National Economic Council Director Brian Deese spoke of the critical urgency to help people.
I want to be very clear. These actions are not a substitute for comprehensive legislative relief, but they will provide a critical lifeline to millions of families.
Now, we reached out to the Little Sisters of the Poor to get their reaction to the press secretary's remarks, and they told us they are not making any public statements at this time. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Now, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi also released a statement on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. She says relentless Republican attacks have left it, quote, hanging by a thread. The California Democrat also says, quote, on this anniversary, we renew our commitment to build on the legacy of Roe v. Wade so that we can protect a woman's right to choose and defend women's hard-won freedoms now and always. Earlier this week, the Speaker of the House said the thought of so many pro-lifers lending their support to former President Donald Trump gave her, quote, great grief as a Catholic. The Archbishop of San Francisco responded. In a statement, Archbishop Salvador Cordileone writes in part, quote, Nancy Pelosi does not speak for the Catholic Church. She speaks as a high-level, important government leader and as a private citizen. And on the question of the equal dignity of human life in the womb, she also speaks in direct contradiction to a fundamental human right that Catholic teaching has consistently championed for 2,000 years. Catherine Hadro, host and managing editor of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, joins me now to talk more about all of this. Catherine, thanks so much for coming on. Always great to see you and get your insights. We heard a bit of President Biden and Vice President Harris's statement on today's Roe v. Wade anniversary, and there in Owen's report, as well as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's thoughts. What's your reaction on all of this?
What a slap in the face. Today is a somber anniversary, a day that we remember the approximately 63 million unborn lives who have been killed because of abortion, because of Roe v. Wade. This is a day that we mourn, not celebrate, and it is especially scandalous considering both President Biden and Speaker Pelosi are Catholics. This is scandalous.
Catherine, from a pro-life perspective, what do you think we can expect to see in these first days of the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, I think both Biden and Harris have been pretty clear about what they are planning to do in their first few days in office and throughout the administration. Throughout their campaign, they campaigned on some very extreme abortion measures. To name a few, to codify Roe v. Wade, to restore full federal funding of Planned Parenthood, restore the Affordable Care Act's contraception mandate, and to rescind the Mexico City policy. Dr. Fauci yesterday, in fact, confirmed that the Biden administration will rescind the Mexico City policy in the, quote, coming days. This means that tax dollars will go to groups who perform or promote abortions around the globe. And I mentioned that this is scandalous earlier, Tracy. This truly is scandalous because President Biden is Catholic, and these measures go directly against the church's teachings on life. We need to be praying for our president. We know that he is a frequent Mass attendee. We know that he is frequently in the true presence of our Lord. Let us pray that the Lord converts his heart on this issue, that the scales fall from his eyes on this most important issue of abortion.
That is so true, Catherine. We need to continue to pray, no doubt about that. You know, this is such a solemn day. How does the church mark this tragic anniversary?
It is exactly what you said, Tracy. It is tragic because, as I said earlier, about 63 million unborn lives have been killed since that 1973 decision when 48 years ago today, to this exact day, 7 male Supreme Court justices ruled to legalize abortion nationwide. This is a stain on American history. This is a great sin in our nation, and that is why the Catholic Church in the United States declares today a day of prayer for the legal protection of unborn children. We Catholics in the United States are called in a particular way today to pray, to fast, to do penance for the unborn, that they may have a legal, guaranteed right to life. We need to pray, and then that prayer needs to move us to action to end abortion.
Absolutely. I want to go back for a moment and talk a little bit more about Nancy Pelosi. I want to get your thoughts on her comments from earlier this week in regards to pro-lifers. What do you make of all that?
That was hurtful to hear, especially because, as I said, Speaker Pelosi is a fellow Catholic. She's a very prominent Catholic figure. And the U.S. bishops themselves have said that ending abortion is the preeminent priority. So for her to infer and suggest that pro-lifers are too fixated and obsessed with ending abortion, not only is that condescending, but that goes against what the church tells us to do. This is a very urgent issue. There are, we know, about 1 million abortions in the United States alone every single year. This is incredibly urgent. In that same interview that Nancy Pelosi had with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, she also went on to say that for those who do not support abortion, they must, quote, love contraception. Again, this is another example of her stating something that directly contradicts the Catholic Church's beautiful teachings on life. And that is why you shared some of the response that Archbishop Cordileone had in response to that interview with Nancy Pelosi. That is why next week I will be interviewing Archbishop Cordileone to speak more about this, because this is scandalous that a prominent Catholic figure is going against the church and what she says.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that interview for sure, Catherine. And it's so great to have you on. Also, a reminder that you can watch EWTN Pro-Life Weekly Thursdays at 10 p.m. And for other airing times, check out our website, EWTN.com. Thanks again, Catherine.
Thanks, Tracy.
Lawmakers in South Carolina are debating a measure that would ban nearly all abortions. A Senate committee narrowly voted yesterday to send the proposal to the full governing body. The plan would ban abortion once a heartbeat is detected. Pro-life lawmakers say that they are confident the measure will be approved. An appeals court is revisiting a pro-life measure in Texas. The proposal seeks to ban a popular second trimester abortion procedure. Abortion groups say the procedure is safe and common. Lawmakers for the state say it should be outlawed. A 3-judge panel blocked the law from being enforced last year, but the full court agreed to a rehearing. Well, the U.S. Capitol complex welcomed back thousands of off-duty National Guard members last night after they apparently had been told to move to a parking garage earlier in the day.
I have told those who run the security of the Capitol that it can never happen again, and I pledge to every National Guard member that it will not happen again.
Several lawmakers of both parties expressed outrage after learning that thousands of troops were told to move to a parking garage with limited access to bathrooms as well as heat. In a statement today, the Capitol Police Department's acting chief pledged that the troops will have access to the comfortable accommodations they absolutely deserve. By a landslide vote of 93-2, retired General Lloyd Austin has been confirmed to lead the Pentagon, making him the first black person to be Secretary of Defense. And as the Senate moves forward with the vetting of cabinet nominees, the impeachment trial of former President Trump will begin in just days. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will deliver the one article of impeachment against the former president to the Senate on Monday. And with that delivery, the trial begins.
Make no mistake, a trial will be held in the United States Senate, and there will be a vote on whether to convict the president.
Soon to be underway, the former president's trial on a charge of incitement of insurrection for the January 6th, the deadly U.S. Capitol riot.
He called upon lawlessness. He showed a path to the Capitol, and the lawlessness took place. A direct connection.
House Democrats who voted last week in favor of impeachment want a full reckoning so the country and the Congress can move on. Republican leader Mitch McConnell says just because the House moved quickly to impeach, that doesn't mean the Senate should rush to convict.
This impeachment began with an unprecedentedly fast and minimal process over in the House. The sequel cannot be an insufficient Senate process that denies former President Trump his due process or damages the Senate or the presidency itself.
Leader McConnell wanted Speaker Pelosi to hold the article of impeachment until next Thursday, giving President Trump more time to prepare a defense. Already hiring South Carolina lawyer Butch Bowers for his legal team. Today, Speaker Pelosi dismissed that suggestion, writing, "The former president will have had the same amount of time to prepare for trial as our managers." Donald Trump is the first president to be impeached twice and the first to face a trial after leaving office. Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the Senate trial will go on as the Senate also tackles COVID relief legislation and tries to confirm President Biden's cabinet. In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, a closer look at how the new administration's effort to reopen schools will impact Catholic schools. President Joe Biden has said that he wants to see the nation's schools reopen for in-person learning as soon as possible, making it one of his goals for his first 100 days in office. Joining me now on Skype to talk about what this may look like is Kathleen Porter-Magee, Superintendent of Partnership Schools, a network of 9 urban Catholic schools in New York and Cleveland. Kathleen, welcome back. Nice to see you. No doubt this is an ambitious goal. From your point of view, what needs to happen in order to make it work?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I think first and foremost, when it comes to Catholic schools, we've actually been leading the way in school reopening. So we're really excited that President Biden and his whole administration is putting the full weight of his administration behind this goal. Catholic schools around the country have been open. Our 9 partnership schools have been open with minimal interruption since the first day of school. And there's really a lot that you need to put in place to make that happen. I think first and foremost, you need to make sure that you have the commitment of leaders and of leadership to open. It really takes a lot. It takes a lot of trust building on the part of the community. It takes a lot of planning and coordination. I think the second thing, and this is one of the things that I think the Biden administration is trying to prioritize, is the vaccinations. And so I think one of the things that we hope to see is Catholic school teachers, particularly those who have been in person, at the front of the lines when vaccines are available.
Yeah, Kathleen, as you had mentioned, many of the nation's Catholic schools have remained open during this pandemic, taking precautions, of course, to protect students and teachers. What impact, if any, will this plan have on them? And what are the lessons maybe learned by Catholic schools that remain open that may help?
I think there are actually a number of lessons learned that hopefully will be helpful to other schools who are kind of following the lead that Catholic schools took. I think first and foremost, making sure that you have really clear plans in place, making sure that you have the PPE that you need. Obviously, you want to make sure when you're opening schools, you have adequate ventilation, you have masks, you have everything that you need to cohort students, to keep people separate. You also need to make sure that you have a very clear plan in place. Eventually, a positive COVID case is going to show up in your schools, and you need to know, what are you going to do? How are you going to keep the community safe to make sure there isn't transmission within the school? How are you communicating to parents? How are you communicating to teachers? And I think making sure that you've got the planning in place, that you have the supplies that you need in place, and that you have the community trust is essential to ensure that we can open. And I think that for Catholic schools in particular, finding the resources to do that can be really challenging. And so when I look to the Biden administration, what I really hope is that they will make sure that whatever federal funding is available to public schools is equally available to Catholic schools, especially because Catholic schools have been leading the way in school reopening since September.
Yeah, and as we know, many public schools are still adhering to hybrid or even complete online learning. Do you think that's helped to reinforce the importance of parochial schools and maybe even boost enrollment?
Absolutely. We've seen that. So it's interesting. We run schools in both Cleveland and New York. In Cleveland, where our families have access to vouchers and tax credits, we've seen enrollment explode. Our enrollment increased by about 40% because the Cleveland public schools were not open. And what communities need, what parents need, and most importantly, what children need right now is at least the option to attend school in person. And so I think when you have the commitment of Catholic schools and when you have access to the funding you need, you do see enrollment increasing. And so I think right now what we need is a nationwide call to action. I think one of the things that COVID has laid bare is the need for school choice in America across all communities.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to get your perspective on this. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of in-person learning for children and possibly the ramifications of not having that face-to-face interaction with teachers and classmates?
It's so important. In-person instruction is essential for almost all students. We know that children suffered in the spring when all schools across the nation were forced to shut down. We know that school districts had trouble keeping track of students. Students had trouble keeping up with their academic learning. And now some students, they're coming up on their 1-year anniversary since the last time they set foot in classrooms or in school buildings. We know there are going to be social emotional impacts on them. We know there are going to be academic impact. And I think when it comes to Catholic education, part of the reason that so many Catholic schools opened is because we really see that the human person is the center of education, and we know how much children can suffer if they don't have that option to attend in person in school. And so I think that the impact of the nationwide school shutdown is going to be felt for a generation.
You know, Kathleen Porter-Magee, Superintendent of Partnership Schools, thanks so much for coming on, and thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you.
Up next, how some of the faithful in Rome are reaching out to the homeless during the pandemic. A Catholic priest in Burkina Faso who went missing earlier this week has been found dead. A local bishop says the body of Father Rodrigue Sanin was found in a forest. Father Sanin had been traveling to meet with the bishop and never arrived. Authorities later found his abandoned car. The Jesuit order in Spain has admitted to decades of sexual abuse by some of its priests. An internal probe found that dating from the 1920s, 96 priests were guilty of misconduct. 17 are still alive. More than a dozen of them have either been punished or are awaiting the results of criminal or internal investigations. All 17 have been removed from any work with children. Officials in Portugal say starting tomorrow, church services are being suspended indefinitely because of the coronavirus. The country is experiencing a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases. Officials say some of the positive tests are from the new strain that was identified in England last month. The Prime Minister also announced that schools in Portugal will close for 2 weeks. The leader of Brazil is pledging to provide the coronavirus vaccine to every citizen who wants to take it.
E você vê agora, há uma sede pela vacina. Nós aqui estamos fazendo o possível pela vacina.
President Jair Bolsonaro says his government is doing everything possible to have the vaccine ready starting today. The country already has 6 million doses, with nearly 5 million more on the way. But health officials say millions more doses are still needed. The former head of the Vatican Bank is convicted of embezzlement and money laundering. Angelo Caleo has been sentenced to nearly 9 years in prison. The charges stem from millions of dollars worth of sales of Holy See-owned real estate. The 81-year-old is expected to appeal. And finally tonight, during the coronavirus pandemic, the poverty rate in Italy has reportedly increased 45%. One hotel, with help from a Catholic group, is trying to improve the situation. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn has more.
Italy has been one of the hardest hit countries by the coronavirus pandemic. The unemployment rate is expected to increase to almost 12%, and poverty levels are increasing. But despite the hardships, some hotels in Rome have opened their doors to shelter the homeless. Marco Coppolo is the owner of one of those hotels.
Well, when the pandemic broke out, first of all, we were shocked, and it was like all of a sudden our place that was ready, it was like at the beginning of the high season, was fully booked. We had like a massive amount of cancellation, so the place became empty.
Making ends meet hasn't been easy for Coppola after nearly 1 year of having virtually no guests. He eventually had to let employees go, but the hostel kept running because he offered some rooms to his own staff.
So we were forced to keep the place open. I use the word force while I can use the word happy, because my staff is my family.
By keeping the hostel active, it was easier for Coppola to say yes when the community of Sant'Egidio asked if he could host some homeless people as well. Maurizio says being homeless is a hard life. Everything is difficult. No food, no shower, no plans. His life started to go downhill in 2009 when he started drug dealing in Venezuela. He was later caught with drugs in Paris and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was released from jail 5 years early and crossed paths with Alex Moschetta, a volunteer from the community of Sant'Egidio.
Sono membro della comunità da oltre 25 anni, da quando avevo 14 anni.
Moschetta has been a member of the community for over 25 years. He started volunteering after school when he was 14 years old. He says it gave him meaning to his life, and ever since then he always kept the poor and those most in need as a priority. When Italy was in lockdown last winter, all Moschetta could think about were those without a home. So he started to look for people who could host the homeless, and the Yellow Square Hostel came through. Moschetta says a small contribution goes a long way. It gives the homeless hope to fight for a normal life again.
Sento questa cosa, io tutte le venivo in chiesa.
You can't change the past, Maurizio says, but his Catholic faith gives him the strength to keep going. He never misses a Sunday Mass, and after experiencing the pure good in other people he has met along the way, he's a changed person from the man he was before.
We should not think about when you can help someone. I think when you help people, it shouldn't be like 0 or 100. You know, there's also 25, 70, 50. I mean, in a small part, everybody can do his part.
In Rome, Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Great story. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.